Hi, Ann Arbor Indivisible. How you doing?
Good.
Good. It is so great to be in a room with all of you. I am State Senator Mallory McMorrow, and I am proud to come to you as the Senate Majority Whip in the first democratically held state Senate here in Michigan since 1984. That is something we should all be proud of. Now, I will give you a little bit of my background so you understand where I come from and how I got here. Then I will tell you a little bit of why I'm running. But I really want this to be a conversation. You know, the most important thing for any elected official, and especially our next United States Senator, is to build a relationship so that I understand what's going on in your life, what's keeping you up at night, and so that I can take those voices in your fight back to Washington with me. So I am somebody, I was born and raised in rural New Jersey. Oh my God, scandal. Don't say that in Michigan. I grew up in a really tiny, small rural town, and I used to pig sit for my neighbors. My brother worked on my neighbor's farm. My best friend's mom raced demolition derby, so I was often on a dirt track on Friday nights. It was very different than where I live now. I have lived all over the country. My mom, when I graduated from high school, took out a map, drew a circle 10 hours around our house, and said, "You must go outside of this circle. I do not want to see you on the weekends. I do not want to do your laundry. I do not want you asking for money. You need to go figure out how to be an adult." And that is how I found my way to the Midwest. And I'm going to say another thing that is not popular, especially in Ann Arbor. I am a graduate of the University of Notre Dame. So I grew up and I always wanted to be a car designer. That's actually what I went to school for. I don't know that many of you know this. Notre Dame has a small but mighty industrial design program. It used to be a feeder school to General Motors and Studebaker. I was a few decades too late to get a job at Studebaker, but I actually had the opportunity to design a concept car when I was in college. I built one of my designs live on stage at the LA Auto Show. We built it full scale over the course of 10 days, which was amazing. We had a class of kids come out. They would sit around the booth and we gave them pieces of the modeling clay. And we wanted to show that this was still an art and you could do it. And in normal times, that would have set me up for success and for my career. But I graduated in 2008. And I don't know if you remember what was happening in the auto industry in 2008, but I found myself shortly after graduation, instead of designing cars, I was sleeping in the back of my car. I had no job. I had no health insurance because the Affordable Care Act didn't exist yet. I had no job prospects. I applied to over 300 jobs, and the only job that I could get for a long time was folding clothes for minimum wage. And I share that to just give you some perspective, because what I hear, no matter where I am in this state, is people sharing a version of their story and saying, I have done everything right, and I am still getting screwed. I can't afford to buy a house. I can't afford to start a family. If I do have a family, I am certainly not saving for their future. I'm not saving for retirement. I can't go on a vacation. And it feels like this promise of the American dream is just that, it's a dream. It is something that, particularly for my generation, for Gen Z, and frankly for people of all ages, just feels gone. I eventually did dig myself out of a hole. I became a senior designer over global branding and licensing for Hot Wheels. So there's a Hot Wheels car that has my name on it. I am very popular with 4-year-olds, and if you know any 4-year-olds, tell them that now in the state of Michigan they can pre-register starting when they are 16, and I look forward to having their support. My career then took me all over the country. I was the creative director for Gawker Media, which at the time was the largest independent media company in the world before Peter Thiel decided to sue us, but that's a story for another time. I produced documentary films and commercials, and my husband, who is a 4th generation Michigander and 4th generation Royal Oaker, the city where we live, we decided to move back because this is where we wanted to put down roots, where we wanted to start a family. So I moved back, I opened a creative consultancy, it was doing really well. But then I watched as 2014 turned into 2015, turned into 2016. And 2 days after the Access Hollywood tapes, I watched one of my neighbors take down their American flag and put up a Trump flag. And these neighbors had girls. And I remember watching them play soccer outside and looking at this flag and trying to understand why. Why would they look at this man and decide this is who we want to elect, not just to any position, but to the highest office in this country? Then I woke up the day after the election in 2016, and there was a video that went viral of middle school students in a lunchroom banging on the tables and chanting "Build that wall" at one of their classmates. That video was from Royal Oak Middle School, which had been my polling place the day before. So there was something about the fact that it was kids, and I cannot express to you how horrifying it was to hear how high their voices were. It just sunk in, it was dark. And they learned that this was okay, not just to think it, but to do it. It made it acceptable. So I did what any sane, rational person does, and I Googled how to run for office. I had never worked on a campaign before. I had voted regularly. I paid attention, but I will be the first to tell you I was not politically engaged. Certainly not in the way that many of us are now. I found an organization called Emerge, which recruits and trains Democratic women to run for office, and I applied, and I think I applied half wanting them to reject me, because then I would have an excuse to say, at least I tried, and I could go back to my job and my career with a little less guilt that somehow this man was my fault. The funny thing about raising your hand is you tend to be called on. So I found myself as part of the Emerge Michigan class of 2017. And we spent the next 6 months, 22 women from all across the state of Michigan, from all ages and backgrounds, who came together. Not a single woman in this room said anything like, "I have always wanted to be a senator." We had a woman who was a scientist from right here at U of M who was horrified at the anti-fact, anti-research rhetoric, and she knew she needed to do something. We had a woman in her 70s who was born and raised in Detroit, who had survived the 1967 rebellion and had come into this class saying, "I have never seen things as bad as they are now, and I need to do something." We had another woman who owned a child care center, and she saw as her families could continually not afford the services that she was providing. Simultaneously, she knew she needed to pay her staff more, and if she did that, then her families couldn't afford the services that she was providing, and knew she needed to do something. So that was where I learned how to run for office, how to write a campaign plan, how to fundraise, which is the hardest thing you have to do, how to write a stump speech, how to pull people together. And a month after my husband and I got married, I put my name on a ballot to challenge Marty Nolenberg, which, since you are not Oakland County residents, Marty Nolenberg was the son of Joe Nolenberg, who had been a member of Congress for 16 years. In 2014, Marty Nolenberg won his election to the state Senate by 16 points. So when I told even my local Democratic Party leadership what I was going to do, they told me, "Oh, honey, that's cute. You're gonna get destroyed, but don't worry, you can build your name recognition and you can run for something smaller next time." I come to you in this room, which may be relatable to some of you. I cannot tell you how freeing it is to get out there and to run without the support of the Democratic Party and with no expectations put on you. Nobody expected that we could do this. So we got to run the campaign that we wanted to run. We built up an all-woman campaign team who had never done this before. One of my staffers had run a local city council race, and that was about it. And we built up a campaign of more than 500 volunteers over the course of a year and a half. It was a lot of retired teachers. My opponent was the chair of the education committee, and let me tell you something, do not piss off teachers, because they never forget, and when they are retired, they have time, and they know everybody. Everybody. We had high school students who had reached out to me in the wake of the Parkland school shooting and demanded to know what I was going to do about gun violence. And that is something that is deeply important to me. I lost a friend in the Virginia Tech shooting, and I was so inspired by the fact that these kids refused to accept inaction that it pushed me to keep moving forward. So when all of the votes were counted on election night in 2018, I beat him by 4 points. That is a 20-point swing in a single cycle. And I've been traveling all over the state. I was in Hillsdale, I've been in Benzie County, and I will tell you, Ann Arbor, I know that it feels like you are a deep blue dot in this state. And I know that in deep red counties, they feel like they are on an island. But let me tell you, when they tell you you cannot organize and rally and find people no matter where you are, or that one place is permanently red, that is bullshit. We can organize everywhere, we can find people, we can find each other. People want to see that people care and are willing to fight for them, and that is the power that you all have in this organization every time you are hosting a protest or an empty seat town hall or a rally and you're getting out there, you are showing people that we care. So I came into the state Senate, and the Senate had been controlled by Republicans since 1984, my entire lifetime. None of my bills moved forward. None of anybody's bills moved forward. We had great ideas, and the Republican majority obstructed every single thing we wanted to do. On the issue of gun violence, again, something really important to me, we introduced dozens of bills, year after year after year, and every single year, they refused to even hold a hearing. When we were looking at the prospect of the Dobbs decision, we had legislation. I introduced the first version of the Reproductive Health Act, despite serving in a Republican district. I introduced the first bill as a primary sponsor that would have codified Roe on the state level, even when political strategists told me that was risky. And the Republicans knew that if Dobbs came down or if Roe was overturned, that abortion would immediately be illegal in our state, that our 1931 abortion ban would go into effect. And they said, well, this should be something we do on the state level. And even when they said that, they refused to hold hearings. So then I woke up one morning in 2022 to the news that a colleague had sent out a fundraising email for herself in which she effectively accused me of being a child molester. And I will tell all of you that I was ready to quit. This was so frustrating. I wanted to tear my hair out. I was looking at my daughter, who was 1 at the time. And I remember sitting at home that night and figuring out what I was gonna do, and she was laughing and I just started crying. I had friends who were worried about me because that when they heard these accusations, when they heard this woman call me a groomer, they know that that is the language that encouraged a shooter to go into Comet Ping Pong in DC and open fire. And they were worried that somebody was gonna come after me. So I thought this was gonna be the last time that I stand on the Senate floor. But I kind of decided if I'm gonna go down, I might as well go down swinging. So I gave a speech in response, and I truly thought it would be the last speech that I ever give, and I put the video of this speech online, and within 24 hours, tens of millions of people had seen it. And I was on CNN, and I was on MSNBC, and Fox News called me liberal Karen with a headband. But 2 weeks later, I kept getting interview requests, and I recognized this can either be 15 minutes of fame that I didn't want and certainly never asked for, or we can do something with it. Thanks to all of you in this room, I'm sure, we had an independent citizens redistricting commission created. And in 2022, we had an opportunity in front of us to flip the state Senate for the first time in 40 years. Now that wasn't guaranteed. The maps alone weren't gonna do it. So I opened a PAC. I raised millions of dollars, not for myself, but for a dozen other candidates running for state Senate. I brought my volunteers all across the state to organize and host fundraisers and knock on doors for a dozen other candidates running for state Senate. And when all of the votes were counted on election night in 2022, I helped flip control of the state Senate for the first time in 40 years. And look, it is not enough to just win. Winning feels good. It feels good to send these smarmy assholes home. It does. But we actually have to do what we say we are going to do when people give us the power to do it. So when we took control in Lansing, we got to work, and we got to work fast. We repealed the 1931 abortion ban. We passed the Reproductive Health Act to expand access to reproductive care, because it's not enough to remove a ban if there are still arbitrary hurdles in place to get access to that care. We expanded the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act to explicitly protect LGBTQ Michiganders at a moment when other states are trying to legislate them out of existence. We passed sensible gun violence prevention, including safe storage, universal background checks. We closed the domestic violence loophole. We passed my legislation, which created Michigan's red flag law. It was my first bill signed into law. It took 5 years. And you better damn well believe I took a lot of those kids who volunteered in my first campaign to the bill signing with me to show that when we organize and we get engaged and we stay engaged, we can actually make real change. We are on track to build now more than 75,000 affordable housing units or rehab affordable housing units. We hit our goal a year early. We just raised it to 115,000 new units by 2026. We banned child marriage, which, believe it or not, was still legal in Michigan until last year. We shouldn't have to applaud that, but we do. 5 of my Republican colleagues spoke out against that ban, by the way, if you want to know what we're dealing with in Lansing. We passed the strongest clean energy legislation in the entire Midwest. We passed filter-first legislation to ensure that no child will ever drink lead-tainted drinking water in schools or in a child care center ever again, while we increase funding to remove all of the lead service lines. I could go on and on, like truly for days, about all of the things that we got done. And yes, we lost the state house, but we lost it by 5,400 votes across 4 districts. It is not a mandate. And we have an opportunity in front of us right now to show people who we are, that we will fight for them, and that what they are seeing is not who we are as a state and not who we are as a country. So now I'm running for US Senate. And I'm running because it is not enough in this moment to send a strongly worded letter. It is not enough in this moment to go out in front of national news reporters and say things like, well, their polling numbers are coming down and we'll just get them in the midterms. Because here's what I know, people are hurting and they are scared right now. I serve on the State Senate Appropriations Committee, and we had a hearing on the impact of the one big terrible bill just last week. And here's what I learned. Michigan stands to lose anywhere from 9 to 13 rural hospitals will close. Michigan State operates a program called SNAP Ed, which employs 96 people. They operate statewide. In some schools across our state, they provide the only school nurse and the only phys ed program. That program will close as of October 1st of this year. Not in 2 years, not in 4 years, like some of the impacts of the terrible bill, this year. So there are kids who showed up at school their first week of school last week or this week who do not have a school nurse, who are gonna have a skinned knee or gonna feel sick and have nowhere to go before they come home. So I am running for US Senate because we need somebody who has a track record. We need somebody who has come up in the Trump era. We need somebody who knows how to punch through, how to fight back, and how to win. And yes, there is a Democratic primary. I want to just start and lay out the state of the race right now. On the Republican side, Mike Rogers is back. Apparently he can't take no for an answer. But not only that, Donald Trump endorsed him and cleared the field. Bill Huizenga, who's a member of Congress from the west side of the state, was ready to file. He had made the decision that he was going to run for Senate. Donald Trump called him and said, stand down, and he said, okay. So on their side, they're making a big bet that because Mike Rogers just lost this seat last year, that everybody already knows who he is, that if he doesn't have to campaign, he doesn't have to raise money, then they can just skate into this election. They are expecting that Democrats are going to fight against each other and spend all of our money and tear each other down, and that they can just win. There is a super PAC that is supporting Mike Rogers that raised $5 million last quarter alone entirely from one guy, a guy named Tim Dunn, who is an oil baron billionaire from Texas, who is also a white Christian nationalist, who said his long-term goal is to eliminate public education and replace it with private Christian education. That's what we're up against in this state. They view this as their #1 pickup opportunity. So on our side, yes, we have a Democratic primary, and we should be proud of that. That is an opportunity for us to get to know the incredible candidates who are running to earn your support. It's also an opportunity for people to get engaged now, so that they don't feel like we're just showing up next year to ask for their vote and support. But I am the only candidate running who beat a Republican incumbent to get into office, who then helped flip a chamber for the first time in 40 years, And then when we got that power, we did what we told people we were going to do. In all likelihood, our next United States Senator from the state of Michigan is going to come into a minority in the US Senate. We have a good chance of flipping the House, and I'm going to work my butt off to ensure that we do. But we need somebody who knows how to plan long term, who is not going to accept that we are powerless, who knows how to organize, who knows how to rally, and who knows that the people fighting are not in Washington, they're in rooms like this one. I have been at protests, I have been at rallies, I have been at marches, I am going in every county across the state, and I am here asking for your support because I cannot do this alone. I am tired of elected officials running for office who tell you that this is the most important election of our lifetimes. How many times have you heard that? 100. And it just implies that if you just vote for the right person or you vote the right way, then everything is going to be fixed. Well, that's a lie. And it's no wonder people check out from this process, because if they believe that one person is going to fix everything, we're not actually engaged. Democracy is a verb. It is something that all of us have to do every single day together. So yes, I would be honored to be your next United States Senator. And when I get there, I am going to need your help every single day to make sure that we keep fighting and we keep moving forward. And that is my promise to you, is that I will continue to be here. I have the track record to prove it. And with that, I'm happy to open it up for questions. Thank you so much. Keep it this one.
Is this thing turning on? It is turning on. Our first question is from Karen.
Hi, good evening. My name is Karen Moss. I'm from Saline. I'm really honored to hear you speak tonight. My name is Karen Moss. I'm from Saline. Hi, everybody. And I'm really very honored to meet you and to hear you speak tonight. My question to you, I'll give you background. Many credentialed experts have said that Trump and his administration are fascists. And I'm wondering if you, as a candidate, have used that word, and if you are to become our senator, will you use that word to call out Trump and his administration? So really my question is, what is the role of a candidate and then a brand new senator in calling out and fighting fascism? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So yes, I have.
Right on.
And here's, yeah, there you go. We gotta call it like we see it. I'm sorry, we cannot tiptoe around the bushes and pretend like everything is okay. I am tired of watching Democrats offer olive branches to people who keep lighting them on fire. We gotta stop it. I was the first to say, so Kristi Noem came here, she came to Michigan, she did a whole big song and dance in Detroit, she put on a whole show where she wanted to talk about the crisis at the northern border. Those damn Canadians. Now, first of all, I looked at that and I said, tell me you've never been to Michigan, because where I live, that's our southern border. Joke's on you. But also, I put out a video, and I know that a lot of Democrats are afraid to touch the issue of immigration, right? That is something where all the polls tell us Democrats lost and Trump won because of immigration. But I put out a video calling bullshit bullshit, because what Trump and Kristi Noem and this administration are doing is not making us any safer. It is increasing ICE budget to $45 billion. At the same time, they're gutting Medicaid, SNAP. Like, we're not feeding kids so that we can increase their budget to $45 billion. So you have masked officers who are not identifying themselves in our streets, conducting raids, and not going after violent criminals, which they said they would do. They've learned that that's actually really hard to do. They're going after moms who are trying to immigrate to stay with their kids. They are going after, in Detroit, we had an 18-year-old who was on his way to a field trip, who was 3 credits away from graduation, and he was deported. There was a woman from Detroit who Googled Costco, and her GPS took her to the one in Windsor instead of the one in Royal Oak near where I live. So when she crossed the bridge, they detained her and her kids for 10 days without access to legal representation, without access to food. One of her kids got so violently ill and sick before she finally got out. And here's what I know and what I said in this video, and I will keep saying it. For law enforcement to work, the most important thing that law enforcement officials need is trust with the community. If you see something, say something. But you're not going to be willing to say something if you don't trust the people who are there to protect and serve you. We saw this in Oak Park, part of my district. Oak Park runs an ice cream truck, which makes sense. They want to have low stakes engagement with kids at a young age to build that trust and relationship early on. But if you have masked agents descending on our communities, going after anybody whose skin is not exactly the right color or who has an accent, you are destroying that trust. And that makes all of us less safe, because it makes it less likely that somebody who is in the immigrant community, who does see a violent crime, to want to call a law enforcement officer. It makes it less likely that somebody in the immigrant community is going to work with an investigator when there is a violent crime, and that makes all of us less safe, and we're all paying for it. So I have that track record, yes. We have to start calling things like they are, but actually telling the story. And this is why I share exactly this, because what I heard, I was campaigning downriver last cycle for Jamie Churches. She was one of our state reps. And there was a woman at the door, and I will never forget this. She told me, I know that Donald Trump is a felon. You guys keep telling me he's a dictator and a fascist. What are you doing for me? And it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. But now to tell this story that, okay, let's all agree, we want safe communities. This is how this is making us less safe and why he needs to go. Thank you.
Okay, our next question is from Jason.
Good evening, Senator McMorrow.
Good evening.
My name is Jason O'Young. I come from Oakland County, but I happen to reside in Ann Arbor. I'm glad you asked the question about what are we going to do about ICE? What are we going to do about the masked agents prowling our streets? What are we going to do about the masked agents taking children from schools, right? There have been many examples of things like this, like stealing food from babes and grants from cancer researchers, which have been illegal, profoundly unconstitutional. And so we wanted to ask you this question. How will you pursue the lawbreakers of the second Trump administration? Who will go after Elon Musk for his actions at USAID? Who will go for Stephen Vogt for his actions? Stephen Miller for his actions at DHS and ICE? Who will go after Russell Vogt and his actions at the OMB? Sorry, Senator?
Yeah. First of all, thank you. Thank you for being so passionate and for giving a shit, truly. And I want to start with this because the questions you ask assume that I'm already in office. Who's going to hold people accountable? I'm going to pivot a little bit, if you'll allow me, because I am in the state Senate right now. And we just got a budget from Republicans in the state house months late. We were supposed to work on this in June. They sent us their budget. Matt Hall sent us a budget that guts $6 billion out of our state budget, but it also includes an incredibly nefarious boilerplate item on page 39. I'm going to tell you exactly where it is. It says in the budget that our Attorney General must seek legislative approval before filing any lawsuit against the federal government or any multi-state lawsuit. Now I share that to tell you what that does. Dana Nessel, our Attorney General, is one of only, 23 people around the country right now who is in the position to actually hold the Trump administration accountable on behalf of all of the residents of the state of Michigan. So my job right now, I went on national news. I was on MSNBC on Belshi over the weekend, and instead of talking about my Senate campaign, I talked about this. And I said, look, whoever our next senator is needs to show that they are going to fight every single day to make sure that we can hold this administration accountable when they deny the Supreme Court, when they deny the Constitution, when they cross the line, when they break the law. The way that we do that today is ensuring that the Republicans do not get away with what they put into the budget. They cannot kneecap our Attorney General because she is one of the only people in the country who can actually hold the Trump administration accountable right now. Because to your question, it assumes that we're going to get there in 2 years. And then we're going to hold hearings, and then we're going to hold investigations. What I know is we can't assume that we're going to get there. So my answer is yes, I want to be that person, but I'm using the platform and the position that I have right now to tell everybody in this room. I went on national news and told everybody watching from Michigan, if you are watching this show, go to michiganvotes.org, look up your state legislator, call your legislators right now, and tell them that you will vote them out of office if they accept this budget with this boilerplate language in it. So that's who I am, and I hope that shows you kind of how I operate as a person, because I want to get to that place where we can hold everybody accountable. But we can't do that if we allow them to get away with this on the state level, and they're doing this all across the country right now. Because the only place the Trump administration is losing is in court. It's not working every time, but it is working. And we got to do everything in our power. So that is my ask to everybody watching at home, streaming, to everybody here. You all know somebody who has a Republican state senator or state representative. Please call them and ask them to call their legislators. This is going to be my fight for the next month, is making sure we have a fair budget by the October 1 deadline and that this boilerplate is not in it.
Is that a sufficient answer?
I think it was.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a third question. The Senate can reduce damage to our country by using the Senate's rules to slow down the entire Senate. Will you, if you're elected and the Dems are in the minority, use all of your powers to grind the Senate to a halt, such as objecting to unanimous consent, such as calling quorum checks whenever there's not a quorum in the Senate, and such as putting a hold on all nominees, and looking for other ways to slow the Senate? Our current senators are unwilling to do these things. They're not willing to use their powers to slow down the Senate and defend us as best they can.
Yes, and I'll tell you why. So I ruffled some feathers when I announced that I was running for this seat. I was asked, probably on day one, would I support Senator Schumer for leader? And I said no. Publicly. And I want to explain why, because right off the bat, people said, why are you ageist? Doesn't experience matter? And I will be the first to tell you, this is not a knock on Senator Schumer's service or his decades of work in the Senate, but it is acknowledgement that this is a very different time. So after I gave that speech that I gave in 2022, I got a phone call from President Biden. And he and I had a long conversation. And at one point he said, Mallory, I've been doing this a lot longer than you have. He said, I've been doing this for about 600 years. That was a direct quote, and it was very funny. But he said, and it felt like an admission, he said, I have never seen things like this. He said, I always believed that there were lines that you did not cross. And I always believed that we could come together as Americans at the end of the day, and that we could fight on the floor, and then we could have dinner together. And it felt like an admission that that's not the reality that we live in right now. So why I said that about needing new leadership, and part of the reason that I'm running, is I am somebody who came up in the Trump era. I ran in the wake of the 2016 election, and this is not, and we have to be willing to say it, this is not even the Republican Party, it's a MAGA party. He has taken it over, he has completely remade it in his image, and if you are not willing to bend the knee, you're out of the party. I mean, look at Peter Meyer. First of all, Peter Meyer opened a PAC called Ginger PAC, and I was very mad about it, because I was like, there can only be one. But he voted for impeachment as a principled thing to do, and he's out. So I come in operating with, we have to be willing to fight with every tool that we have, so that eventually, hopefully, there will be a Republican Party who cares about decency and doing its job that we can work with, but that doesn't exist right now.
Okay. I'm happy that you want to use those tools. I also have the next question. Indivisible is working with other groups to form a massive, organized, nonviolent movement to defeat Trump, even if he consolidates enough power to effectively create a dictatorship. Will you publicly announce your support for Indivisible and this goal? In what ways can we expect you to support us in this endeavor if you do?
Yes. I said before, I believe the next leaders of our party have to be with the people who are fighting today, and that is in the protests, that is in the streets. I have been at the Hands Off rallies, I've been at the No Kings rallies. I brought my daughter, she's 4, to one of the Hands Off rallies with me, and I had a bullhorn, and she was tugging on my pants and she said, "Can I say something into the bullhorn?" Sure. And I put it down to her, not knowing what was gonna come out of her mouth, and I pressed the button, and she said, "We all share our world." And I just thought, I am not screwing up as a mom right now. I'm doing something okay. But I want to show her that this is what this looks like. That we can show up and we can use our voices and we can show other people who drive by that we are there and they are not alone. Another story that I shared on national news, I was in Hillsdale. And Hillsdale, local organizers organized a No Kings protest in Hillsdale. Think about the bravery that takes. Hillsdale is the home of a lot of the architects of Project 2025. And there was a group of 10, 12 people who knew that they had to do something and they had to use their voices. So they organized a protest, they stood outside of City Hall, they made signs, and yes, they knew that they were gonna get heckled and they knew that they were gonna get threatened. But what they shared with me when I was out there was that yes, there was a lot of that, but there were also more people than they expected who drove by and waved and thanked them and honked and gave thumbs up. And what I know is that, yes, I support all of these efforts and we have to do it everywhere. Not just in Ann Arbor, but in Hillsdale and way up in the Upper Peninsula and in Macomb and everywhere to start to show people that they are not alone. Because here's what I believe about Donald Trump. So I told you up front that I was born and raised in rural New Jersey. Now, I think that gives me a unique perspective because for us, Donald Trump was not the guy he played on The Apprentice. He was the guy who bankrupted Atlantic City. All of us grew up knowing somebody who he didn't pay, a contractor, friends, family. So you gotta know how to fight the way that gets under his skin. I think Gavin Newsom is doing a great job. Like, troll him, just go out there in all caps and smash away. But also recognizing that Donald Trump operates the presidency like it's a reality TV show, because that's what he knows. So from sunup to sundown every day is planned with events and photo shoots at Alligator Alcatraz where they sell merch, which is the most dystopian, disgusting thing I've ever seen. It's all planned. So we have to be willing to compete and win in the attention economy. So that means protests, rallies, using TikTok, going on YouTube channels, going on Substacks. We've done hundreds of interviews since I started this campaign in a lot of small Substacks and YouTubes that maybe nobody's ever heard of, because we have to get out there with our message. So yes, so I've shown, if you invite me to your protests and your rallies, I will come. Sometimes I will bring a 4-year-old. I can't promise what she will say, but it's important. I want to show her and the next generation and anybody who drives by that I'm doing this for her. Because I don't know what kind of country we're going to leave to her, but right now it's in a dark place, and we got to turn it around.
Hello, thank you so much for being here. I really like what you said about what is going on, here and around the world does not reflect who we are as people. So in the spirit of that question, do you support an effort to end the sale of American weapons and American military funding to Israel?
Yes, and I've said as much. So, unsurprisingly, this has come up at every single event that I've done, especially over the last 3 or 4 weeks. And I'm going to share something personal and then tell you where I come at from this. So my husband is Jewish. My daughter's name is Noah, which is an Israeli name. And a few days after October 7th, I received a direct message, a death threat on her life. Somebody said she does not deserve to live because of the name that you gave her. And I hope that our friends and allies around the world want to protect and look out for us as Americans, even though Donald Trump is our president. Israel being an ally doesn't mean that we rubber stamp every single thing Netanyahu does. Because, by the way, 70% of Israelis do not approve of Netanyahu or his actions. And I come from a place where I believe that no single life is worth more than any other single life. And what is happening in Gaza is indefensible and enraging. So I support peace and security for Israelis and peace and security for Palestinians. And right now, Our tool, our leverage as the United States is weapon sales to Israel. So I do support stopping those weapon sales so that the immediate crisis must be addressed. There was a really good piece in The Atlantic by Yair Rosenberg that argued, if he were Benjamin Netanyahu, which is big if, flood Gaza with so much aid that it becomes valueless. Because the argument they make is Hamas is stealing it and they're selling it at a premium and they're putting it into the tunnels. Flood it with so much aid that it becomes valueless. Make sure that there is not another child that starves because of what is happening in Gaza. I talk to a lot of people, even in the Jewish community, who worry that Benjamin Netanyahu's continued actions put Israel's long-term peace and security at risk. So yes, that is our tool. And I said publicly, I would support Bernie's resolution to end offensive weapon sales until the humanitarian crisis is addressed, because that is what our tax dollars are going to, and we cannot support it any longer.
Okay, our final questions from Tracy.
Hi, good to see you. We've been very frustrated in communicating with Senators Slotkin and Peters. We need a candidate who responds and not with form letters and, platitudes. How will you make yourself more accessible than Peters to constituents? Do you have examples in your current office of state senator?
Yeah, so I have been in the state Senate for the last 7 years. And what I am more proud of than anything else is our constituent services. I've got the best in Lansing. If you have an issue, I mean this, so we had a resident in Detroit, one of my constituents, who had a hole in her roof. And she had qualified for a home improvement grant to have that hole repaired. She had that hole in her roof for 3 years. So the contractor never showed up. She couldn't get an answer. She called people at the city. She called people at the state. She finally called our office. My constituent services director, Elizabeth, who, just incredible. I'm going to shout her out by name because she's so good. She stayed on this issue for 8 months, refusing to take no for an answer. And now that woman has a roof over her head. Not a hole, not a tarp. So that is something that is really important to me. I also believe in being very accessible and transparent at all times. I know that this is a big state. It's a state of 10 million people. But we live in an era where there are a lot of ways to communicate, very candidly. So right around the November election, I was feeling all kinds of terrible ways, like I'm sure a lot of us were. And I don't know why I thought to do this, but I opened Instagram and I popped up a little question box that said, ask me anything. And right away, I got flooded with hundreds of questions. People said, how are you holding up? How do you balance being a mom? People would ask me, what's the difference between a bill and a resolution? Do you think protests are effective? How do I contact an elected official? Somebody asked me, what's my favorite Bluey episode? They asked what kind of snacks are at my desk. This was like during Lame Duck, so there were a lot of pictures of my very messy desk on the Senate. But I lean into all of the new ways that we have to communicate with people. So since November, I've answered over 300 questions. And we surprised somebody just this week who actually reached out to my campaign, actually said, I disagree with your stance on Israel and Gaza. I had said publicly that I would support stopping arms sale. He disagreed. He emailed reaching out to the campaign. I called him and we had, a 15-minute conversation, but he said at the end, he was like, I am so surprised that you called. And I was expecting a position paper and a form letter, and I just knew, this is a really, people bring a lot of emotion into this conversation. We should just have a conversation about it, and I did. So we go above and beyond, and I will support the staff necessary to make sure we have a presence everywhere. I know, like I said in this opening, I can't do my job without you. We need to use our voices, we need to organize, we need to rally. I love giving people actions online that you can do, like please again, call Matt Hall and tell him the budget is terrible. But we have to work together. So that's my commitment. It's something that I've done for the last 7 years. I will leverage every communication platform available to do that. I will come to as many events as I can, and I will make sure that the priority in my office is continuing the reputation that I built up. And I'll leave you with this last example because I think it's a good one. During COVID-19, if you Googled unemployment help Michigan, my office was the first result that came up. because so many people were calling and they couldn't get an answer, and we were the one office that was actually getting UIA concerns resolved for people, which that feels really good. And that's the most important part of this job.
Thank you, Senator McMorrow. On behalf of everyone here, thanks for coming tonight and speaking and taking questions.
Absolutely.
And so now I guess we'll have just 15 minutes where you can talk to your individual.
Absolutely. Can I make one last appeal?
If you liked what you heard tonight, I really mean it when I say we cannot do it without you, so I am here asking for your support. My team is here. We need to collect 15,000 valid signatures to get on the ballot. We can turn in up to 30,000. If you've paid attention to the news in Michigan over the last few years, a lot of people have been kicked off the ballot because they haven't gotten enough valid signatures. So I will say you can only sign for one candidate who is running for any office. So if you have signed for Haley Stevens or Abdul El Sayed, you cannot sign for me. But if you haven't signed for anybody yet, I'm going to ask that you sign for me. If you want to volunteer, find anybody on my team. This is going to be a big challenge ahead of us, but I really believe, to my core, that we have an opportunity not only to show the residents of the state of Michigan, but to show the rest of the country what it looks like to be different and to fight and to stand up and to win in a way that we can only do in Michigan. So thank you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if you volunteer, you get a t-shirt. I am a teacher. No, if you volunteer, you get a t-shirt for free. Oh, I yeah. No, got folded into Oak Park.